Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reaper Book Club pick for May. I know we're well into June, but we're here. And I'm joined by Lauren from Happy Haunts Library, who is linked in the description box down below. So definitely go check her out. If you like my channel, you'll love her channel. It's all about Halloween all year long over there. Lauren loves a good theme too. And I highly suggest checking out her Chucky chat she did yesterday. I had so much fun. I missed it because I was at work, but then I had some downtime at work and I was like, I'm gonna watch this because my boss
It's
was
Chucky.
working. Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna watch this. Yeah, it was really good. I love your little tier ranking. The way you ranked it is so creative, or both your rankings. It was so much fun to hear you guys chat about that. And yeah, just subscribe. It's fun time over at Lauren's channel. And so for May, the Reaper Book Club pick was LINGHUN by A. Jing. I'm probably totally mispronouncing that. And it is a novella. All of the books that we read for this book club are a novella. And for June, I just want to mention really quickly is going to be the new Eric LaRocca book, This Skin Was Once Mine and Other Disturbances. So it is a short story collection. This one is a bit longer than my typical book club pick. I think it's 230 pages. So a little bit longer than the typical 100 pages. And my co-host for June is going to be Kitty from Spicy Cats Reads. So I'm super excited for this one. And I'm managing to actually do sprints for this one, which is exciting, and a live show, hopefully in the same month. So lots of exciting stuff happening. And I'll welcome you guys in. We have Christine here.
Hello, Christine.
Hi, Samantha. I'm ready.
You and me both. You and me both. I feel like I have an idea, and I'd like to know what your idea, because I think there's actually been several occasions, Katrina, I've DM'd you on Instagram, and I've asked you wait, did I understand the ending of this book? I think there was that one Crossroads ending. I was like, did you get what I was getting? So I think I need some help as well, Samantha. You're not alone.
Yeah, it did feel like it just ended, but it is a short book too. So yeah, I might be confused too about it. There's a lot going on in it. I feel like it's definitely more literary than horror.
Yes.
But we'll get into it. Hi.
Hello, Liz.
Yes, I was very excited to read this one, and well, I'm like, oh, I don't have a ton to say. Now I'm like, I feel like I have a lot to say. Hello, Melissa. I just read spoiler reviews on Goodreads for a refresher. Nice.
I was doing the same, right before.
Hi, Kat. Other disturbances is right. Oh, it's a quick read. Oh, good. Nice. Yeah, I think this is 4 short stories in this. And yeah, I love the cover too. LaRocca always has great covers on it. It's weird. Their books usually I always have are paperback, and this one's hardback. I was like, that's weird. I looked for the paperback because I want all my books to be the same. I'm like,
of course,
they
naturally
all need to match, and that one was hardback. I was like, okay, I guess that's fun. So same here. I am here to understand it better. I felt like I zoomed through it and didn't really comprehend.
It was so short. I don't think I realized how short it was because I listened to it on Everand, and they have the whole short story collection after. So by the time it actually wrapped up, and then you get to her acknowledgments, author's note at the end, I was like, wait, there's an hour left, but there isn't. So that was confusing.
Yeah, I thought so too. I actually didn't know the short stories were in here as well. So very short. I think it's 100 pages.
But she packs a lot in there.
Yeah. The ending felt very abrupt, but also because I listened to it and didn't realize there were more stories after it.
It was all of us.
Yes. So I take it most everybody here has read it, but you guys can pop emojis if you want to in the chat if you read it or didn't read it. I picked a robot and a house for did not read, or read robot. did not house. So while people do that, Lauren, do you want to talk about what this book is about, or the synopsis? And we'll do, I guess we should just do spoilers too, so you can go into spoilers, because it's so vague to talk about it without the spoilers of what
Mm-hmm.
home actually is and stuff. So feel free to go into spoilers. I will put up a spoiler thing as well in a moment. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, because it is also like 100 pages, as you said. So there's like, I talking about it in a non-spoiler way is literally just talking about the summary in the back of the book. But this follows three different points of views, which I personally didn't find too distinguishable. But you have different kind of like age ranges and different positionalities in how they're experiencing one specific place called home. And you have a young girl who's forced to, very reluctantly, to move to home. And home is a place where you have um, all these homes that somehow, in a very like dystopian way, I felt, all are able to have the potential to view spirits. And it all depends on who's able to access, which is a huge privilege, very violent ways of accessing these homes.
mhm.
And in hopes of, there's no guarantee that you actually see the spirit of the person that you want to see. You have another perspective that gives us insight into the lingerer community, where they're just literally dashing their whole entire lives, any opportunities elsewhere to hopefully, maybe, very slim chance of being one of the people to win those brutal auctions and therefore get a house where they can hopefully, maybe, potentially, like it's so tiny, be able to actually see the spirits of their loved ones who've passed. And then you see with a third perspective of Miss, who you eventually get to know her name down the road and her backstory, which is super tragic. She is kind of like this elder in the community, and she's still there hanging on like everybody else is to the really, really slim hope of being able to see her deceased husband, who she had an incredibly toxic, unhealthy relationship with, which gives a lot of insight into the themes regarding like immigration in this story and grief. And once again, he still kind of has that like control over her, even after he's passed, over her life, just like all the other spirits have over their communities.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, I think dystopian, I didn't think of it that way before, and now you're saying that, and I'm like, oh, the lottery part, like, I don't know, that felt very dystopian, now that you're saying it. Yeah, it's a lot going on in 100 pages. Like, there's a lot of grief, and as you said, immigration. I believe the author is an Chinese Canadian, I believe. And yeah, so she hits on that with the character, and then I think the grief parts of it were done so well because it's done from a different point of view. You're not necessarily seeing it from the parent's point of view. You're seeing it from the sister's point of view, who is kind of grieving like her parents because they neglect her so much afterwards. Like, there's a lot going on in it. It's so sad. Like, I think I started it earlier this week and I was like not in the headspace because,
Mm,
like, I don't know how many people here listen to the King Cast podcast, but it's like one of my favorite podcasts. And the co-host died very suddenly, and unexpectedly, natural causes. But like, I just got done listening to like Hit Their Remembrance episode, and I was like, I went in and I was, I'm going to start this book, and I was like, I can't be in this headspace, like right now. It's not that I
yes.
was like upset or really well, it is upsetting, but it's like I didn't know him or anything like that, but I was just like, I can't go from that to this, like, kind of thing. So it is a very heavy book, and I feel like it's really heavy, like right off the bat, with that. Look, I don't remember even putting these emojis here.
But what you were
uh
saying about the grieving, like I understood that she was a very like reluctant young girl in the situation, but the layers of grief, I don't think I was as conscious about her grieving the shift in her relationship with her parents because her 6-year-old brother died. So that's a good point. It's like, yeah, she's unhappy that they're not like letting go of his memory, which therefore means like she's neglected. But it's like this grief of like another example of how relationships change for the people who are still living because people have passed away. That's powerful.
yeah, and how her mother, like, I feel like her mom didn't even talk to her unless it was, "Oh, go get him." Like, summon him, like, cause she was the only one that could summon him, and yeah, it was just, like, you could feel her anger and, like, when she's just pounding on the door and stuff, it's like, yeah, I would, especially to be an adolescent girl, I would be fucking fuming. I would lose it. I would have been the Aries in me would come out big time. Like I would be like, what? So yeah, you. I feel like is it? I'm probably gonna mispronounce it. Her name, but Wen Kwai. I felt like that character was done so well, and my favorite character in this. And that is one of my questions. Actually, if you liked Wen Kwai, everybody read it. That's awesome. I know this book has been out for a minute. Uh, yes, I think this book also would hit very differently if I was a parent too.
Mm,
Like,
mm-hmm.
yeah, I think she's a great character for so little time that we had with Wen Kwai.
On the
I think,
audiobook, it was pronounced as Wen Chi.
oh, when she, when
Mm-hmm.
she, I feel like we had little time with her, but you like got all of her. And yeah, I might have tried to burn the house down, honestly. My
Oh,
parents pulled
absolutely.
pulled like they took her away from like didn't they yeah, they moved from a different country or small town or something, like during school, during
I
high
feel like it was like a
school.
city, yeah, it was, like, probably way more, like, stimulation for her, a community she could have found solace in, but literally now
Yeah.
she's dropped in a place where, like, literally everybody, even the people camping outside of your front door, which is the weirdest part of this whole story, are literally all in the same headspace as, her parents, and it's, like, this weird status symbol too at school, like, it's inescapable for her.
Yeah, and, like, the lingerers, they, like, eat gruel or something all the time, like, that's how I pictured them, just, like, gray people, like, with Liam, they were, like, following Liam around, like, eating gruel or something, like, it's dribbling down their face or something, I was like, "Ugh, they're the
Okay,
creepiest
this would
part of
be
this."
a great yeah, this would be a great Junji Ito, like, graphic novel. I would love to see his spin on all of this.
Yes, I was like I the imagery was great in it. It felt very, like, gray, everything was, like, gray
Yep.
in it and old and kinda decaying, like, the town of home itself was, like, decaying. Uh, let's I really enjoyed the grief in this, but literally I thought her brother died as a young adult, then regressed to a boy in a ghost form, and was so confused at first. Yeah, I didn't think he died as a young adult, but then we're told he died young, like he
I
was hit.
initially thought that he was like a teen when he died, and then we got this backstory of that one brief little moment where he gets hit, and it mentions that he's sick. So initially, yeah, Sam, I was also thinking the same thing, like, oh, he was much older, more closer in age to her because now she's in high school, which I think even shows just how far the time spans. Like, I can't even imagine how it has been since I mean, actually, I don't really know. We don't really know how, because I was assuming she was really close in age with her brother. I was thinking that there's been like a decade basically of their family just being this way. That would really suck. But I guess we didn't get information on how long ago the brother died, right? Do you remember anything like that?
No, well, when Chai was, young too, young as well, because her dad covers her face, like and I
Oh,
pictured her being, like, smaller, and when it happened, she sees it, but then he covers her face, so,
okay. So it's been a long
yeah.
ass time that they've been these zombie parents to her.
Yeah, and I feel like the dad too, like, you don't even is he like yeah, you don't even hear him any dialogue from him, what I remember correctly. Like he's just there, like which is even creepier. Like he doesn't talk to her. Like
And
I
his
don't know.
half-hearted laughs that are just like, yeah, let's just keep up this facade. Let's just keep the like they just really are satisfied with the shadow of what once was, and like how do I play that even though it doesn't feel like, I think they know intuitively it doesn't feel right, doesn't feel real, but they want it so badly to feel real, like the brother's really there.
Yeah. And you don't even, when they do summon him, he's not, they can't see him. Like, really, it's just like, yeah, you're right, like a shadow figure and stuff. Like, Winchai is the only one that like actually sees him, if I'm correct in that too. That's kind of what I got with his little robot. I liked
Oh,
being her. I liked her being written in first person because she felt so real and compelling compared to the other POVs. Yeah, maybe that
I
is
agree.
why
Hmm.
I, yeah, connected with her more than Liam or Miss. Even though Miss's story is very sad.
Why do you
I,
think that she was the one person in the family that could summon him? Like that put a hell of a ton of pressure on her. But like why her of all people? Because like she doesn't even want to have that kind of power or control.
uh, well, if it was her little brother, I feel like being a younger sibling, like um, I you're kind of obsessed with your older sibling, and you kind of like tag along and stuff, and like you wanna like do what they say or something, like that's just how I felt about my little brother too. And I have older siblings too, but we have like a big age gap. But my little brother always would, he'd literally do anything I said at a still a certain age, and he would always be like want to be in my business and stuff, but there was a bit of an age gap with us, so I was like, I don't want to hang out with a baby, like I don't want that. So maybe it's
Cramping
a
my
little bit
style.
of that, like little brother sister relationship, that I was like, oh yeah, that just made sense to me. Like, yeah, he's only going to do what she tells him to do, because it's like sad mom and sad dad over here. You
Mm.
didn't, um I don't know. That
That
is
makes sense
interesting.
though, because she like we don't get any of his POV in all of this, and he's literally just like we don't know him. We only know him through the sister who feels so neglected by her parents, only focusing on his death, and then the parents themselves have like this image of this child that once was no longer is, and through a lot of cultural forces, like she's very much neglected, and I think also we get the sense that like he and her had like a really sweet relationship together. So I think there's something like that kind of like tethers them to each other in ways that are not a part of the dynamic between him and his parents.
Yeah, it's definitely a very different relation. Sibling relationships are so different, I think, than parental. Uh, unless you have that a big age gap. I feel like if you have, like, my older sister is like, oh gosh, like 15 years older than me, so it's like a big age gap between us, where I do feel like she is my mom at sometimes. Don't let her see this. But yeah, like, if she tells me to do something, I'm gonna do it, like, just because, not because my sister necessarily, it's like, oh, like that feels like a parental person talking to me. Yes, the lingerers did feel like zombies, and they're added such a creepiness. Like every time Liam came over or something, or she saw him, he had the lingerers around. I'd be like, that would be so obnoxious. Oh my gosh, lingerers. I didn't understand why they ate that and not real food, but I guess you can interpret that as food doesn't like anything when taste like anything when grieving. Yeah. Or you don't want to eat, or these lingerers don't necessarily have. I'm taking they don't have any money either, so you're just eating gruel like like an
Mm-hmm.
orphan or something. And a Dickens story. I found Winchai so sympathetic and very true to being a person wanting to move on from a death when others around you are ready. But I struggled with her relationship with her boyfriend. Yes, the Liam part felt very insta, like, I don't know if she just did that though to like get out of there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the first opportunity. And I think also with like the food that him and his other fellow lingerers were eating, I think it also was there to like signify that even like all aspects of their lives are solely in service of seeing their loved ones again, like avoiding anything that would lead to moving forward. And that is like to choose to move forward through grief is very brave, and it requires you to, nourish yourselves in literal and like figurative ways. And the fact that they're eating things that probably are trash, like everything good about it has been removed, I think it just signifies that what they're putting into their bodies literally, but also like what they're putting into their brain, their lives, like their life purpose and their trajectory, it's literally devoid of like any sense of nourishment, any sense of life, because so much of what they're devoting to in their lives is like literally death, like to the point of, being in that community, that place to find their spirits. But then also like literally what they're eating is devoid of life. Like it's literally like the summary of the book is a place that like respects the dead and not the living. Like it comes down to even the little nitty gritty parts of like what they're consuming.
Yeah, which is so it's so sad that like that just adds another level to grief. It's like never escaping, never being able to escape it, which is horrible. It's like, haven't you heard of the 5 stages of grief? Okay, like,
I have a book for that.
oh, so maybe she was the little sister. Okay.
But I think you're right on that interpretation. I think there's a really, because again, we don't get his POV, and we only get it through all these other people who are like, having different positionalities to grief and his death. I think it has a lot to do with their dynamic we got, where she mentioned that like he was the one ally in that household because of like their cultural pressures and how that gender dynamic works out. He was like one of those few people that she felt like was nice to her. But even then, she felt like he was nice to her out of like guilt or something. Like she still couldn't accept that people were like nice to her just to be nice to her, even her brother.
Yeah, which is it's such a sad story. And now she's in high school. Yeah, she's been dealing with this for a while. Yeah, I yeah, the boyfriend part, I do think she was just like, that's her my ticket, let's go. And then she caught feelings on the way.
And then she got feelings.
Because she's very iffy about him beforehand, right? She's kind of sus. She's like, I don't know what's his motivation here, like, and then she's like, oh, you want to go? I want to go too, bye. Like, it's like graduation day, so sad. Parents
Okay,
didn't
that's
even
the
go.
worst graduation day ever. Just like her father just clapping solo. It kind of reminds me of Jade's graduation day when like literally like birds, like you could hear birds chirping when she walks across the stage. It's so
Yeah,
sad.
so sad, just alone. And then didn't they read another name and he's still clapping or something
Oh,
too? And
dark.
yeah, I don't think the book explained why only she could see him, but maybe because usually younger people and animals are more open to those things. Yeah, I could see that too. And also just being kind of put through that trauma too, like, well, um, like seeing that at such a young age too, like seeing her little brother die horrifically, like leave some part of you open to that. That part when she was forced to feed him. Yes. Oh my gosh. On his birthday.
So weird. Those are like the very eerie, creepy things that just show you as the reader like how uncomfortable it is for that situation to like even exist. That they want that, they desire that, they are living for that, but it's so not natural, and that's what makes us feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Um so the um audiobook, I feel like we have to talk about the audiobook for a second. Did you like the audiobook?
I I liked the audiobook in the background and everything. I love being able to like hear the pronunciations for me. And then also I really felt like, and I re-listened to it multiple times, the last chapter with that piano music at the end. I was like, oh, this is like hitting. This is wild. Even though I don't really know in that very last scene what she actually decides to do. Like that's my question. But I liked it. What did you feel about it?
it started to freak me out a little bit. Like, you hear the
Good, good.
knocking, and then you hear the footsteps, and it's just like you hear the little voice of him, of the
The
robot
little
and stuff.
echo.
The echoes, like, I was not expecting that audiobook to be so well produced. So it gave me goosebumps actually during parts. I was like, ooh, like this is effective. So the audiobook was like one of my favorite things about the book actually. Um, and yeah, um, the I do remember the beginning of it though. I was confused for a second because I knew the town was called home, but then she was talking about like their home, their it just got confusing for me, just not following for a second. So I had to like slow it down and re-listen to the beginning
Oh,
because
I
I
had to
was
do the
like,
same thing. I've re-listened to some of the chapters too because I was like, wait, I don't understand that. And I also had to like read slower than I typically do.
yeah, I was like, Uh, I'm confused already. Let me go back. And I did
Yep.
listen to it slower than I usually, not my 3 times speed or anything.
It's so wild.
She caught feelings, but also never had anyone in her life that ever made her feel loved or important. Yeah. And he seemed very sweet to her, which is nice. Okay. I'm going to put I believe, hello. Uh, it's okay if you're late. Sorry. It's good. Did you read it? I'm horrible at Spanish, so sorry. I just realized late. I saw late. I felt like the author was trying to draw parallels between Winchai, Liam, and Mrs. Husband, but we didn't get enough of why she loved Liam for that to land for me.
Same. Same. I did not understand that storyline. Like I didn't feel convinced that this would be so earth-shattering for Liam to die, which makes me feel like it isn't about that. It might be about something else that Liam represents for her in her life.
Yeah. I think at the end, I do think she chose to stay to be able to see him again. Like that was my interpretation was like she's gonna stay
With
for
the okay, does she stay with the family or in I think she stays with the family and not in Mrs. House, correct? Like she visits there obviously, but she decides to like kind of go back with the family?
it's like she's a lingerer. Like
Okay, yeah, she's just like sitting there, and there's like the line that confuses me. She's like, and then I sit here, and I sit here until
mhm.
all the other lingerers die. It's like Liam's parents, and I'm just yes,
Yeah,
saying, okay, gotcha.
she's
Just
the
watching the house.
she's the ultimate lingerer at the end. Uh let me see the last line. I look back to the window of my old house, waiting to enter, wanting to enter, but too afraid to face what's inside. Like maybe
Avoidance. She's avoiding her
maybe
grief.
she would just didn't want to even go in because I mean, how long can her parents really how sustainable is that? How sustainable is sitting in grief for years? Like it's going to shorten your life and like you, you can't be the zombie, like forever. Um yeah. That's what I thought. But I don't know cuz yeah, I feel like I don't know, maybe she really did like Liam.
I mean,
She
I'm sure
really
she
was
did,
for
but
him.
I wasn't convinced. I feel like the whole like coming back to like Mrs. House, and then the names somehow are just like so similar. Like when they're identical, I think it's like a little too on the nose. Like Christine mentions about like calling the town home is like really on the nose. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in here that was like very obvious. So less like, kind of mental work to have to do to kind of like put the message together. But I think it's also wanting to be very clear that um because also Miss tells Wen Chi, like, I see so much in you. Here's my house. Like, I foresee you also like avoiding your grief and kind of going down this destructive path that I feel like it's very much like a full circle. Like she becomes the town's miss, which
Yeah.
is so sad. It's a sad ending,
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah, because that's like the one thing she didn't want to stay there. Like, yeah. Yeah, the
It's so
audiobook
sad.
is good. It
It's like
is
the
so sad.
inevitability.
Um, I really liked the author's note a lot too.
Oh,
We
I
can
was
talk
obsessed
about
with
that
that.
later.
Hmm.
So good. The ending of the author's note, like I think that was one of my favorite things about the book actually. Um, it was like you're not alone. Like what did the author say? Like it was so good. I was like,
Yeah,
oh my
that was
gosh,
her last
that is
line. I was
so
like,
you're not
oh, so
alone.
good.
I was like, oh my gosh, it's so
It
good.
actually helped me enjoy the book way more because I feel like as somebody who's like had like intense experiences like with grief that like have been spanning a decade of both the avoidance and then the direct um, working through and processing of that, and then also being somebody who loves the cathartic nature of like grief horror novels, I felt like when I was just experiencing this novel through grief, it wasn't the most contributory book. Like I don't feel like it was doing anything groundbreaking, but then I read, for me at least, my experience of like going through things personally and you know, at one point I literally had a death positive podcast and I was considering becoming like a death doula. So like I've done a lot of work around things, but then I read grief horror and there's like sometimes in like they talk about things in new ways. I'm like, oh, that's really intriguing. And I feel like the grief around death and loss of humans was something I feel like personally, I don't feel like this book did anything new. But then when she talked about in her acknowledgments, the grief around immigration and place and culture and
Mm-hmm.
language, there I was like, ah, okay, there's something different. I can go back, read this book, and view it from that lens, which is something I feel and also have not really seen any media around.
Yeah, I definitely took away a little bit more, I feel like, from the author's note than the actual story. And you're right, like the grief stuff in this is like nothing super nuanced or anything like that. It's just like a really sad story with good imagery and like it is different, I feel like. But yeah, it's nothing like I feel like it is your typical grief story, right? And you just kind of want to reach out and shake the parents and be like, you should have talked about all of this before, and you know, like um having a death plan, like you're funny being like a death positive and stuff. Yeah, I'm the same way. I watch Caitlin Dowdy ask the mortician and stuff
Yeah.
like have a death plan and said it, even if it's just a verbal death plan, like make sure your loved ones know and everything, like your best wishes and every like you know everything like that. My family has like a meeting every 5 years. I feel like you could sit down. It's like, well, you know, this is what's up right now when we die and stuff. So, and it's awkward and it's weird, but it's like you feel like you need to. It needs to happen like
Absolutely.
beforehand. But yeah, I felt the same way. I was like, I just want to go in and shake these parents and be like, you know, you need to go to therapy, not the town of home. Like, what are you
But
doing?
that's so real, though. So I give her tons of props as a writer to make you feel that kind of frustration because it is still so real that like people, even like myself, right? You're so like adverse. Like that's a part of us. I feel like all the characters are like a part of the grieving process, and like you put all them together, and then you're like come into like one person. Those are like the tug and pull of how you feel when it comes to grief. Like there's a huge part of you that literally never wants to accept, and you will hold on
Mm-hmm.
for dear life, even like at the detriment of your own life or things that are life-giving and healthy and nourishing for you. So I think it was very evocative of that frustration, which is very effective for her as a writer. Was this her
Yeah.
debut novel?
I'm actually, I don't know. Not sure. Um, oh, Clay McCloy Chapman just said the blueprint for a new Hill House. And I did want to bring up Shirley Jackson actually, because I feel like there's a bit of a homage to Shirley Jackson in this, with the lottery part actually kind of playing out. Shirley Jackson's the
I know you
lottery.
love your Shirley
I,
Jackson.
I was like, this is like the lottery and Shirley Jackson. Like it's gnarly. Like, oh man, it was. Yeah, I was like, that's the homage to Shirley Jackson in this. It's the lottery scene. I thought was so good. But I'm actually not sure if you guys know in the comments if this is Chang's debut novel, please let us know. And if the short fictions are connected to it in any way. Because I was wondering about that too. But I just didn't want to go into that to confuse myself even more. I realized that we haven't even talked about ratings. We just kind of jumped into it. So if you guys want to drop your ratings down below, let us know what you guys rated this one. I'm sitting at like a 4-star, 4.5-star. I loved it, but yeah, I think it just left some stuff open for me, which is fine. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at. But I did just read this today, so
Oh gosh,
it
yeah.
might change. Where do you sit with your rating?
I was thinking about it because I know you always ask in your book club chats, and I feel comfortable giving it a 3 because I feel like this would be great for, like, it does really great stuff for grief, and I think it's a book that you get from it what you're willing to take from it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it does require a bit of heavy lifting in this book. And I think that there's some things where I was able to kind of like change the way I looked at it and analyze through subtext and imagery and things that are a little more allegorical. And I was able to take away a few things. And it helped when I read that author's note to view it through the story of like immigration, culture, and lineage. That is something we don't talk about when it comes to grief all that often, like we do with like the loss of people. And I also felt like there's some characterization stuff that I don't feel like, I just wish it maybe was like a little smidge longer in that sense, and being able to understand a little bit more clearly about what happens. Like sometimes writing is a little too open-ended for me, where I kind of want a little bit more of a concrete thing. But I do appreciate now that I'm reading a little bit more of like translated works and stuff by authors that aren't necessarily writing through a Western framework of like that traditional rising action, falling action, resolution kind of thing. I'm learning to appreciate a little bit more of a different approach to storytelling, that you don't necessarily always have to have those endings, which it's very like, that's a cultural thing in literature to expect that story arc that I was taught in school in the United States. So I think I enjoyed parts of it, but I think just where I'm at and where I read it, and what I was able to do with my mental work cerebrally, I guess, 3, I think, fits for me.
Yeah, and I know what you mean, like that the way it ended, it just ended. There's no real resolution. It's like you have to kind of, yeah, do the heavy lifting. I think you're so right about that. I would love to see a Mike Flanagan doing a little adaptation, like a short film of this. I think he could nail it. He pulls at the heartstrings of everything, and a
Yes.
lot of his subject matter, horror subject matter, deals around grief and stuff. So I would just love to see like a little thing. Even though this book was so it had such great imagery, I would love to like see it actually play out in
It would be
screen form. I think
so
would be really
cool.
cool.
Mhm.
Like a little, like even like a little short film or something on YouTube or something, I think would
Or
be
like, okay, do
fun.
you remember? I hope that they're coming out with more seasons, but Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, this would be a great
Oh
episode
yes,
for that.
yes, I love the Cabinet of Curiosities. How what was the it
Like
was
the
like the
name
grave
is,
robber one. I really
oh my
liked.
God, the
Yes,
rat.
the
Oh,
rat.
I gotta rewatch that. It's so good.
I still think about that. Ugh. Yeah, that
Forever
was
always
good.
chasing that high of that episode. I love it. And then also the beauty one. If I've been reading a lot of beauty horror, not really enjoying a lot of it, but that episode with like the goo and the commercials, like, so good.
Yes, and she's so sassy at the end of that too. I love it.
We love
I
it.
was like, that's great. I think I lost my place. So
Just find the one with the numbers.
sorry. Yes, I think it was Sam. Yes. Oh, wait, maybe. Mrs. wasn't when shy in the future, right? Hmm.
I think she could be. I feel like this book is literally so vague on purpose, and you could
Mm-hmm.
totally like view it as when she like fulfilling like this self-fulfilling prophecy, no matter how hard she tries, she will become the town's next miss. Or
Mhm.
literally she always was, and we're like time traveling or something. Like literally, I think this book is so open for that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, Mrs. Story was so sad, and I feel like it was just kind of dumped on you at the end too. Like, oh, the author was just drawing parallels. Yeah, now I'm starting to think she was a ghost.
See,
Mm.
totally possible. Totally possible.
I like to think the happily ever after was she got out and lived a happy life moving on, but I don't know. Yeah, it seems like I agree in the full circle of the story at the end. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking happened. Like she is just going to be the next miss, or even lower than that and not even be in the house and be a linger or something. Like, yeah. Yeah, I thought the ending was devastating. She still got stuck in the cycle of grief she was trying hard to avoid. Yes, 4 stars. 4 stars, I wanted more, but she really packed a punch in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the writing was great. 4.5. Oh, somebody's
Ooh,
shifting there. Cat is shifting
up.
uh, up. I thought it was very important that the main family was of Chinese descent, and knowing how much they were grieving for a male child. Yeah, that is a good point too. Like, would they have grieved if it was her? Like, in that sense. Yeah, that is a really good point. 4 stars, 5 stars,
Wow, this book was a hit.
5 stars. Yeah, I think it would have hit differently too if I liked more literary stuff.
Oh
Like, I'm
yeah,
not like the biggest literary horror. I'm like, oh, give me like all the cheese and like jump scares
trash.
and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
trash. Yeah. I'm like, this one has a lot going on in it. It looks like it was her first long fiction. She won a Stoker Award for this. She is Chinese Canadian, so I would love to see her explore more what she spoke about in the author's note. Yeah,
Same.
that author's note is I think that's like one of the best author's notes I've read. Since like Stephen Graham Jones author's notes are always so good too. But yeah, like that was good. I was like, oh, I don't know. It didn't make me
And that
cry, but I was
steampunk,
like, oh,
the steampunk book that she said that she's going to be writing in the future or releasing about the grief of like movement and migration. I'm like, yeah, sign me up. I love that. Sounds great.
yes. Agree. As a reader, I felt like I definitely had to do some heavy lifting to fully comprehend. Yeah. The rat was intense. Yes. I'm a huge fan of literary horror, but somehow I had a little difficulty connecting with this one. It's my 3 star. Yeah, I understand that for sure. I have a tough time with literary stuff now.
Same.
Um, okay, so other similar grief recommendations. I have a couple.
Ooh, throw
Uh,
them down.
of course, we got to talk about Crossroads by Laurel
Yep.
Hightower. And this is a little short one too, but I think it packs a lot in. And yeah, as you said, this ending too just kind of does just with this one. But I wanted to share, if you guys like Laurel Hightower, the Day of the Door is her new one. And I think let me see if this is it. Watch me paste this here and it's not it. Nope, that's not it.
Does it have grief themes in that one?
It's like uh trauma, like familia trauma, like abuse from the hands of a parent in that one. That's very intense. And there's a character in that, the mom is a total narcissist, and you're like, oh,
Mm.
Laurel Hightower has dealt with a narcissist in her life. Like it's it's crazy, but it's so good. But Jason from Jason's Weird Reads, if you guys see on my community tab, I'm gonna try to find it really fast too. He is interviewing Laurel Hightower tonight at 6 p.m. on his channel.
That's so cool.
So let me copy this really fast and drop it in the chat if you guys are interested, because I will be there. I'll be in that chat. Jason's a great interviewer. I watched his interview with Gwendolyn Kist for The Haunting of Elkwood, and it was so good. I was like, oh, this is great. So yeah, Crossroads, if you're looking for more grief horror, of course, the OG, the Pet Cemetery for grief horror, even with Baby Cage in this being like a baby and hit by a car. I thought of Pet Cemetery immediately when that happened.
That's right.
And LINGHUN, I was like, there's
okay, of course.
parallel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't not connect that.
And then another Stephen King that I thought of that is a little bit different type of grief is for a spouse in this. A guy loses his wife early, and he goes completely insane and goes to all these lengths to try to see her again. And it's told from a different point of view, though. It's not told from the point of view of the husband. It's told from just kind of a person seeing it happen on the outlies and like how far it goes, like over years. And it's like it goes there. It's the ending of this is horrifying, and it's so good.
I've never heard of that one. Does it not get enough like attention? I feel like it's a hidden book of his.
Yeah, Revival. It came out I think 2012 or something. So it's like one of his newer books that I don't think people really talk about it. 2014. And it's cosmic horror. But the cosmic is like towards the end and stuff. It's like a buildup of it, and it just goes so crazy. I actually reread this one a couple years ago, and I was listening to it like on Libby in the car, and Alex was like, I'm scared. He was like, oh man, that's terrifying imagery, and it really is super scary. I highly recommend it. It is like a bit of a slow burn throughout because it's just like this normal guy. You know, he meets this dude, his wife dies, and he kind of sees like what happens to him over the years. He keeps bumping into him, and it's like he's holding revivals and stuff. Like, yeah, it's crazy. But yeah,
awesome, I think
it's good. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so I feel like this book is, because I feel like there's different kinds of like grief horror novels. There's or just grief horror in general. There's like really hopeful, let's process through this, let's find our way into the light. And then there's other grief horror where it's like, let's lean in to the darkness, let's let it consume us, let us be the grief. So there are two different kind of genres. Like the more light, happy grief horror, I would think, is like the Small Spaces series, which is very hopeful and sweet. And then there's also like about the death of her mother and growing up as well. And then there's like another middle grade novel that's like a standalone. It's called The Halloween Tree, which gives you great like the grief of growing up and Halloween, your relationship to Halloween changing as like the allegory for like you growing up. Like it's really cool, especially as like Halloween lovers. It's super sweet. Yeah. And then
it's so cute.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be also Kelsey's book club pick, I think, around fall. And then for movies that come to mind, a lot of them lean into the grief. So I've read a lot of stuff recently about viewing the Frankenstein, like whether it's book or movies, like viewing that through grief, a grief lens, and like how it's like a grief horror novel. And that was new to me when I started reading stuff in March about that, like the lengths he goes to lean into that like darkness and the grief, the desire to avoid that. And if he just would have accepted that like people die, like his like important people in his life, and would he do the things that he does down the road to like subvert that? I recently watched Midsummer, and that's literally all about grief and leaning into that. She finds herself in some really interesting situations to find her community, to find her quote unquote home. It's unnerving, the endings, because I at least was like in two different places of like, yeah, and like, oh, wait, never mind. This actually maybe is not a good thing. So lastly, I really love The Descent, because I think that one as a movie is really great at showcasing after the death of two really important people in this woman's life. It's very obvious, right, how she goes deep literally in herself and her psyche and her soul, but she's literally going deep into caves. And what ensues is a heroine's journey of sorts through her grief, but then also that ending, which there's alternate versions of, is so great for like conversation and discussion, because what does it even mean? It's like such a big thing. How does she move through, and what is the end result for her and her grief, not just her life? You could like view it through two different ways.
That's funny you brought up Midsummer. Have you seen Hereditary?
No, I'm
No.
afraid. I don't want to. I'm
That's a
afraid.
big grief horror. I think so Midsummer does have that heavy beginning. But Hereditary opens up with Toni Collette at her mother's funeral, like talking about her mother, and she's like, she just lost her mom, and it's kind of a weird relationship between them. And then she ends up losing her daughter. Not a huge spoiler, but you see her grief like play out, and it's like that is absolutely horrifying. I have goosebumps thinking of Toni Collette like screaming like still like during that. Yeah, so I think that one is insane. I don't know how it connects to everything else in that movie, but the grief is definitely like a huge horror aspect to both those movies. I think, did you notice the when Danny in Midsummer is crowned May Queen, and she's like being carried on the platform? If you look into the woods behind, it's her
Okay, no, I
sister.
didn't. But somebody in a
Yes.
video breakdown showed it, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't notice it in theaters, but I was like at home, I noticed it and I was like, is that her sister from the beginning? And then I see that like mentioned a lot. I actually saw a TikTok, somebody breaking it down and was like, Danny, this isn't the best thing for Danny, like joining the cult and stuff. And I was like, I don't know about that. Like, because she's like, this cult is not going to give her the same thing that her boyfriend did and her family did and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't know. What else is there to really take from Danny at that point? Like,
That's the discussion I love. People like
yeah,
talk so much shit about people who find this movie to be a happy ending. Because you could view this movie as a happy ending or a really sad ending. And I'll read the comments sometimes and I'm like, but I really enjoy watching people like sometimes just go into the delusion and be unhinged. So I'm like, people need to not be so like, like I have the one authority on things. Feel how you want to feel,
yeah.
Katrina.
Oh yeah, definitely. I walked out of that movie like that is the breakup movie of like my
Yeah.
my my decade of this decade. Like that is such a good breakup movie. It's so great. It's so fun for your eyes in that movie too because there's like lots of little foreshadowing things that you'll see like on rewatches and stuff. Like that's one of my favorite movies to rewatch. Like if you get past that horrible beginning
I
where
loved it though. That's why I was like, "Oh, this is fucking dark." And it's my personality now. You'll see in a video that's coming out on Tuesday. I want to read books with that vibe. This like like Midsummer is my personality. So you're gonna get. I mean, you won't, but like people will get so annoyed.
I also saw a thing recently where the boyfriend was like, it's actually like his fault that that happened to her family because he literally told her, don't worry about it. When she got the email at the beginning, like she's like, hey, I'm like really worried about my sister. She sent me a weird email. Do you think I should go over there? And he's like, no, that's just your sister being your sister. Yeah. If she
Gaslight,
would,
gaslight.
if she didn't listen to him, just saying.
Just saying.
Just saying that dude might have deserved everything that he got in that. And my phone is Danny for May.
I love how much you love this movie. It's like unlocking another level. There's just some movies where like I wait around to watch them. And then when I do, I'm like, you're so dumb. Like this is literally like life changing. I love that movie so much. I love how much you love it.
Yes, I to rewatchability too. I think it's so much more fun than rewatching Hereditary because Hereditary is so heavy and like dark and just like kind of violent in places. I feel like you don't really get that in Midsummer. Like the violence happens mostly off camera and
It's just like little
till the
scenes
very
of it
end.
too. It's like little
Mhm.
still like a still of it or like a just a panning shot. You don't actually see any movement, but the visuals are so striking. And it really does feel like something that has so much rewatchability. Like I could literally just read a whole book about somebody talking about the imagery and the visuals. And it's just like when I watched for the first Omen in theaters, I was like, I love the story, but also like, this is so freaking beautiful. Like, I can't stop looking away.
Yeah, that's a fun one too. I was talking about that one with my boss who like doesn't watch movies or read horror or read books or anything, and I was like, yeah, but the first Omen is such a good prequel. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah. No, nobody knows. It's okay. Yeah, Midsummer is what is it? Oh, there's cannibalism in it too.
Of course,
And
naturally.
I just learned that recently as well. So I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So it's like so much horror tropes happening in it. That's great. Because at first too, I thought it was going to be like a drug movie and like or like the horror, like a horror drug movie, like you're having a bad trip or something. And I mean, it is that too, but yeah, there's just so much stuff going on because like there's parts in that movie that made me so uncomfortable, like when that dude claps so loud and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, that would be horrible to be that out of it and somebody does that to you. Like, I don't know. Like
It's a lot. And then they're just like sitting at the table, the whole like, the outsiders that have come and their faces, like towards the end, like the last meal they all have together, they just look so they're not there. Like there's no light behind the eyes. That's so simple, yet so disturbing.
And if you watched again and you watch the very beginning when they're going in to the little town, there's so many people. There's so many outsiders. And then towards that end shot, there's like barely any of them left. Like, so it's like, what else? Like, how many?
I didn't catch that. See,
So
I need to rewatch this movie. Oh, so good.
In Below, she deals with trauma with her ex-husband. I think she is working out a lot of his shit in her writing. Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah, that was a good one too. Revival, so good. I just had someone recommend Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield after I mentioned liking LINGHUN. It's allegorical grief horror. Yeah, I liked that one. I know a lot of people don't really like that one. For some, they're like, nothing happens in it.
I'm kind of in that mood though. Summer makes me want to, like, I just finished Death Valley, which is the book that's like pink and then it has like the tear of like a little cactus. I'm kind of into books where you're just kind of with one person that you find interesting or funny or just kind of something's there that like personality can hold it. I'm kind of in that era. And I think summer brings that out of me because I'm just kind of like putzing around. So I might give this one a shot. I've never read it. The cover looks really cool.
I think this one too is very light cosmic horror. Like what happens in this one, I'm like, oh, okay, like that's kind of cool. Like I don't know, I liked it. I really like Julia Armfield's what is it, Salt Slow short story collection. It's has like a really the Salt Slow. It's hard to say. The last story has like nautical horror stuff in it. And yeah, I like the whole collection actually, and I really like the writing. But I think Wives Under the Sea was like 3 or 4 stars for me. I was like, okay, like it's good. I think it would be good definitely to read for Pride Month. The Fisherman is grief horror. Yes, it is. And it's cosmic. So there's so much cosmic and grief horror. This Thing Between Us. And that's a cosmic one too. Yes. Oh man, Hereditary. So good. Yeah. You gotta watch Hereditary.
One of these days.
When you're
feeling,
I know
how emotional it is. Yeah, and there's like something visceral where like sometimes I'm more likely to read something. Like I read tons of grief horror, but then watching it on screen, my nervous system can't distinguish because it's so. I think it's the visual thing where like I'm forced to watch something and I don't have control over the experience and the imagery like I do when I read text. I could like tone down stuff when I'm reading versus watching it on screen. So I have to be like in a really great, excited mood to watch Hereditary. Because I also know there's like that one scene with the daughter too that I'm like, okay, I got to be in a really great mindset.
Yeah, and then there's like a close up of that, just a heads up.
Why?
Of that, yeah. I keep hearing about Midsummer and haven't seen it. Oh my gosh. I think it's on
HBO Max.
Yeah. We're like, it's on Max. Go check that out. Perfect for summer.
It's the perfect time right now.
Yes, I really want to rewatch it. I read that they purposely had no bird song for it to feel unsettling. In Midsummer, yes, you don't hear any birds. That is
That is
unsettling.
powerful. I didn't even clock that.
How, okay, so, and they filmed it, it's all in daylight too,
So bright.
and it's very, very bright, and you know they're outside. How did they get it out the birds? Like, that just sounds like another level of work, but well worth it because it's so good. And yeah, we love I love Danny so
Love
much.
her. I love her so much. Her cute little cheeks, and she's just so like, oh, she's so real. I love her.
Oh yeah, Midsummer and Hereditary, both excellent. Yes. I didn't notice while watching though. The Babadook. Oh yeah, because that's like a mom grieving the husband and also dealing with like a troubled child.
Have you watched
Um,
it?
mhm.
I have not seen it, but I know it's referenced in like Scream 5, so I'm like, probably should.
It's scary. I think honestly, the Babadook like is terrifying to like have a kid. It's like I don't know, like because that kid was just like a lot, and there's like stuff in it. Yeah, I won't go into it here, but it's like she's just kind of like at her wits end, you know, like yeah. Gonna watch it this week. I've been persuaded. Yes, you have to
Success.
watch Midsummer. Yes, yes, yes. Let me see. I think I have one more question, and it's like a fun, not really a fun question, I guess. Would you ever live in home
Oh
to
my
be able
gosh,
to
what
see?
a question. Hmm. That is a really great question. Do you have an answer for this?
I honestly, I wouldn't live there, but I would love to study it. You know, like for as like a paranormal researcher or something.
That sounds like I would love a whole series of novellas where we just have different like approaches to navigating this and then we learn more about the lore. Like I'd love if it was like built up. That'd be super cool. I am tempted to. I think my first intuition is like I would probably want to because there's like points in your grief where like you feel something so like you go like there's like this threshold on a daily basis of like your grief. And there's some days where like well, I mean, most days at this point for me, everything's fine and dandy. There's no real like flare up of emotions. But I remember in the past just feeling like I've gotten so far on that like spectrum, that threshold of like going to a place where it's like literally like you hit a wall of sorts where you can't accept the reality. And that's like the avoidance is a temptation. So I think it's very tempting as somebody that has experienced such intense grief of like a really important person in their life to want to go to those places, but then intellectually knowing after more recently in that decade of loss, knowing that that is not healthy, that is not right. I think it just signals that I'm in a healthy, nourishing like relationship to death and to loss, that I know it wouldn't be the best place for me because who knows, one could totally become a lingerer because didn't when she tried her hardest, her damnedest to not, and then she just found herself back there because she didn't have the tools and the support system, right? That empty graduation moment for her to navigate and move through. And I think it speaks to the power of like community and really needing to have others enter into the picture in your grief process. To do your own grief work on your own is such a challenging like expectation to put on yourself. There's so much pressure. Like there's only so much we can do growth wise on our own with our own selves before we do need other people to kind of come in and support us. So although I'd be very tempted and probably would take a whole lot of like self-control not to visit home, I feel like it'd be best for me if I like never ever went. But I'd be so tempted to experience that because of the potential of maybe possibly that slim tiny chance of seeing that deceased loved one.
Yeah, I just don't think I'd have the lottery part in me
Oh,
to
hell no. Uh-uh.
yeah, no. I don't have I would be the spectator. I'd be like on the outside watching it Hard pass. Oh,
I know that was funny. Hard pass.
hard pass. Yeah, I would love to like just see it and like even just seeing
Yes.
the
Mhm.
lingerers or something. I think would be really interesting.
Yeah, you vlog that and I'll watch that.
Yeah, I wouldn't live there though because the lottery and yeah, housing is buying a house is ridiculous already. So
Oh, mhm.
I lost my dad last year, so being completely honest, I think I would. Oh, Melissa, thanks for sharing that. I would, to be honest, but I would also hope to eventually leave. Yeah, it doesn't, I think the idea of it is that you never leave, though.
Yes. I know. That's why I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, like I think yeah, it's very, as you said, tempting, and then, but just knowing you're gonna get stuck there is, it's like purgatory.
Mhm.
So right now in my life, I'd say no, but I can't say that I'd never want to. You know, I have a very obsessive personality, so could totally see myself spiraling, knowing a place like home exists.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
yes, Crystal,
and
yes.
that's such a good point, Crystal, because you're right. Because it's like, you know, right now I would love to be a spectator of that, but not saying in the future if I lost somebody, I would be like totally in that stage in the stage of grief, denial, and just like running and spending my whole life there. Like I totally get that. And yeah, I would just have to rewatch The Haunting of Hill House by Mike Flanagan. Netflix exists and be like, I gotta work through this grief. The 5
Absolutely.
stages of grief and that.
Mhm. I think that's really cool how, like, you view and talk about, like, the 5 stages of grief being represented in those individual child characters. I mean, they're, like, adult children, but, I think also the characters and the violence and the dynamics that exist in the town of home all somehow culminate into what happens internally for a person where there is that, like, temptation to leave and do the higher thing, but then also there's huge parts of us also that want to stay, that want to linger in our grief, because through that we kind of keep the memory alive. Because what's the alternative moving forward with our lives? And we have an existence that, like, they're no longer a daily aspect in the forefront of our brain or accessible to us. Like, that's also very scary in ways that are just as scary as like staying as a lingerer. So I like that use of like reminding me about how Flanagan did that, because I think that helps me better understand the dynamics in home.
Yeah, and yeah, like it's all there, but it's just done differently than that. So yeah, I'm very excited about his new thing he's doing, The Life of Chuck, which is like a short story by Stephen King that is about a guy dying, like in the stages of dying, and him kind of
Oh,
grieving his life, but it's done in like a really weird, bizarre way. I'm not even gonna go into it because it's so bizarre. But that's what he's working on, like independently since the strike happened. So that should be coming out soon. So I'm excited to see that his like interpretation of it, because it's like kind of a trippy little short story about a guy dying, like the life of Chuck. Like, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's horror. I don't know. There's some creepy stuff that happens because I guess his brain got all wonky. I don't know as he was
you've read the
dying, but
short story? Okay.
I read it when it came out though, which was like 5 years ago now, I think, which is crazy because it feels like it was yesterday.
But anything he does is really cool, Flanagan. So I can't imagine it not having some like interesting way of approaching something that's already interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. I will watch if I will probably watch anything he does, like anything. But thank you guys for joining us for, I think this was a really good conversation. I knew you were the person for this conversation, Lauren. So yes, if you guys aren't subscribed to Lauren, please do so. And then also be sure to check out Jason's interview tonight too, if you can. Maybe just have it on in the background or something, because I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. Because yeah, I'm very excited for that one. Even though The Day of the Door is a different book than grief horror, but I think there's definitely grief in it too, because yeah, you'll hear about it, I'm sure. But thank you guys for joining, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.